This is People and Their Poems, a podcast about the poems that make a difference in our world. People and Their Poems is presented by Ornog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome to People and Their Poems podcast. I am Sandy Carlson, and I am here today with the one and only Katie Schneider, the newly crowned Poet Laureate of the amazing town of Norwalk, Connecticut. Katie earned her MFA from Fairfield University. She published the book, I Used to Remember the Story of How. She holds regular open mics down at Eco Evolution in Norwalk, Connecticut, and she does 10,000 other things. And we'll talk about those things in the course of our conversation today on the podcast. Katie, thank you so much for making the time to join us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to return here. And just anytime I get to spend with you, Sandy, is just a delight.
Well, thanks, Katie. This will be fun. And we met a good 4 years ago now or thereabouts, right? There was Ed Lentz had a poetry event.
Yeah.
At a vineyard. And we were just coming out of COVID, and you were doing the weekly, you and Chris Belden were doing the weekly poetry readings online.
Yeah.
And it just kind of went from there. So after a chance encounter at a vineyard, an open mic, we've gotten to connect through poetry at different times, and it's been a real joy. Would you talk about what inspires your work and what kinds of topics you like to write about?
Oh gosh. I think there are so many different kinds of inspiration that I think poets and writers have. I think some writers are really committed to sitting down and writing every day and maybe tapping in through a prompt or just free writing, or they have an outline that they're trying to fill in. But I'm much more of a sort of a as the spirit moves writer. I just feel like if the inspiration is not there, if the flow is not already flowing and I'm not like tapping in, I'm not channeling it, then I'm forcing it, and it's just wrong. There's this great translated quote, obviously from Rilke, from the Book of Hours, where it says like, oh, it's about forcing yourself. It's just like I'm not going to quote this right, so forgive me. But the gist of it is like when you're forcing yourself, you're not honest. It's not real. It's not good. So I really believe in flow. So with that being said, a lot of inspiration to me is coming to me all the time. I listen to a lot of music, and music for me will help me tap into memories and feelings. And from that, I'll build playlists. And from that, I will say to myself, when the time is right, I'm going to put this song back on, listen to it on repeat, tap into that feeling that I know, or that memory, that image that I know that this kind of gets me to the place of, and I'm going to like write this, like just right through the first draft. I'm going to try my best not to stop and edit myself. I'm just going to write it. And even that has to be kind of the right timing. It's sort of, I feel like poems of mine take years to write because they're all kind of marinating, fermenting at different rates. They're like different little jars of poems fermenting in my mind to perfection. And, when the actual writing happens, it's kind of much more isolated moments because by then it's ready. And then editing typically happens pretty quickly after that. Although I always need at least an overnight between big edits to just see the poem the right way. So I think the inspiration really comes from really powerful moments of my life, experiences that, change me. I think things that really affect you and stay in your mind, but it could also be everything from like these big moments to just images or quotes or news stories that stick with me. And it's like sometimes I'll know in the moment where I'm like, okay, this is a fresh little a fresh little poem that's going to be marinating, percolating for a while and come out as something hopefully really glorious. And some of the poems I'm most proud of that I'm particularly thinking of two that were published in the Connecticut Literary Anthology, the 2024 one, which came out of my trip to Palestine in January 2019. Those took a while to write and revise, and even longer to be published. You know how it is.
Yep.
But I'm so proud of those poems. And for me, there was no way that I was able to step off the plane and write them. It took probably maybe a year and a half later, I had a draft of each of them. So it's like this very slow process, but somehow it always happens. And I have, book length manuscripts full of poems somehow. I just trust the process.
There's a
Yeah.
lot to be said for that because they're give the gift of awareness
Yeah.
and nurturing that awareness in your soul, if not on a piece of notebook paper or, some people do voice notes, which I don't quite get, but I've
Right.
got I got my pen, I got my paper, but and Billy Collins made a similar observation once. He remarked that he didn't do a lot of revision because the
Mm.
poem lived so long with him before he wrote it down that he wrote it down when he was done.
Oh, that's amazing. I would say I'm very, very similar to this. It finally comes out when it's almost done. And I think this is why I like love generative poetry workshops, but I'm also like, it's a miracle if I write something that I would want to share at the sharing time at the end, because I'm such a slow, like long-term writer. It's not that I can't. Some great things have happened, in the moment. Um, but yeah, I very much relate to what Billy Collins said in that way.
So I've
Oh,
had the honor of hearing your poem about your trip to the Holy Lands. Would you I don't know if that's what you want to read now, but would you mind sharing
I
some of your
would love
poems?
to.
All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it, Katie.
Oh, I have a few that are really important to me, but I think in that very, very special series, I think there's one that is probably I think the most powerful and kind of speaks to the overall experience. Let me just grab that um, from my uh, folder here.
Okay.
Oh dear. Okay. So many different documents. Okay. Now let me just get to it. Apologies if my face is turned a little this way. Hmm. All right. Okay, so the one that was just published in the Connecticut Literary Anthology that I am so, so proud of, that is so important to me, that is kind of like the poem of all the other poems of my of my trip to Israel and Palestine, is this one. It has two titles separated by a slash. This poem is called The Holy Land / the Occupied Territories. Driving back to Bethlehem on a clear winter night, my memory of it now makes it wider. I return from a village perched on a hillside, carved with ancient terraces like each hill in the vista, seating homes, holding orchards, each catching sunshine, all living, breathing testaments to the people of Palestine. Now, between the last evening and first morning prayer, I almost forgot occupation was there, that man-made oppression's hideous gears were churning under distant stars of the sky, among silent, narrow roads and minaret lights. I watched the twists and turns, ascending, descending, so many stone buildings with people dreaming inside. I almost forgot at that time that tucked into the shadows of the land were the cold cenotaphs and apathetic bones of patriarchs in their hallowed crypts, bare to air ruins of emperors and kings, the lingering echoes of prophets' warnings. Somewhere crushed to powder was the broken jar of perfume, the landing place of Jesus' tears, the execution site, the empty tomb. Thank you. Oh,
Oh,
my
Katie,
heart.
I'm right there with you. You know, the imagery that just puts the people so close to the earth.
That is my absolute goal. Thank you.
Yeah, and even the things that are created that are of the earth. That
Right.
yeah,
What I notice about myself when I read my poetry back is, I well, this has always been true of my poems. I am really interested in the cosmic and really interested uh, in people, how people treat each other, whether that's in a religious context or not, but how the religious imagery is reverberating off of this. I spent many years of my life as a very religious evangelical Christian, and while I still don't regret myself and the role that played in my life and how genuinely important that was to me and how I did things really um out of what I believed was good and true and right and kind. I'm no longer um uh in that community, I would say my spirituality is separate from that, but the images that I draw from that, especially the very charged images um of Christianity that are associated with the Holy Land, that are associated with Zionism, that are associated with uh a lot of the rhetoric that's happening right now in the United States, the way that Trump uses Christianity. I think all of this is really interesting to me and very important to speak to. I think there is a terrible, a terrible misuse of um, of religious teachings that I believe are meant for good, for peace, for love, for togetherness and unity and sharing among humanity. And I think that that is being paired in a really nasty way with authoritarian ideas. And so it was pretty wild to be kind of going through a lot of personal changes with my beliefs during the first Trump era and being in the Holy Land, observing the terrible injustices that Palestinians genuinely live with. And it is not controversial to speak to what is actually happening on the ground there. It was so important to me coming out of like communities that really are very Christian Zionists to try and draw attention to, if we love our neighbor, we need to care about what's happening in Palestine, and it's not propaganda to care about your neighbor who lives in a different country and is just suffering. you know,
yeah.
um, it's really challenging to talk about that because there is a lot of propaganda that divides people that's fighting against it, unfortunately.
Well, that's it. And even the way you structure the title and where the word oppression emerges in the poem.
Yeah.
The poem does what poetry does and what those great Bible stories do. They don't let us rest in one place.
That's right.
Your mind travels, and I think all those tangible things, including The broken jar of perfume. And of course, I think of the story of the faithful woman who washed Jesus' feet with perfume.
You got that reference?
And yeah, that's what we do. We celebrate each other and we give everything we have that's valuable if we love.
That's absolutely right. That is
So great stuff.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
thank you
Sandy,
for,
you got this poem, Sandy.
I went to Sunday school too, Katie. You know?
No, you got it on all the levels. Well, because I mean, you're the great Sandy Carlson.
No, no, it was amazing, and I'm glad our
Thank you.
listeners get to hear that poem. So thank you for very generously sharing it with us through this
Thank
podcast.
you. I'm honored.
Do you have another one?
I do. And I very recently read this poem, and it's just so timely. And unfortunately, the times are a little challenging right now, but we need to face them.
Right?
Unfortunately, but we must. And this is the poem that I'd like to share, also with some powerful religious parallels. It's called "How Did the Disciples Fall Asleep?" And this is a poem that I wrote as a reflection on the death of Shadi Habash. I don't know if you've heard the story, but we're living in a time of where people are being imprisoned for their freedom of speech. And that is really scary. And maybe folks are not so nervous because maybe they're coming for the international students first. But the way that these authorities are behaving certainly makes it seem like they might not be too afraid to do it to citizens as well. And this is the kind of thing that happens in countries all over the world with truly dire consequences. So this is, I think, a very timely poem for that reason. Shadi Habash was a young Egyptian filmmaker who was arrested, tortured, and held without trial for more than 2 years at Cairo's Tora prison for work he did on a music video for Rami Assam's song Balaha, which criticized and mocked Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Shadi died in that prison in May 2020 from alcohol poisoning after mistakenly drinking hand sanitizer, according to his lawyer, so they say.
Mhm.
In October of 2019, Shadi wrote a letter to his friends and supporters meant to be a part of a campaign for his release, though it was only released as a powerful spoken word YouTube video after his death. His letter begins, "Prison doesn't kill, loneliness does. I need your support to not die." The letter ends with, "I know a lot of friends who love me are afraid to write about me, thinking I will be released anyway without their support. I need you and I need your support more than ever." Upon Shadi's death, I observed a tremendous outcry from Arab artists that I knew abroad, saying, "Why do we only have change-making protest after it's too late?" So here's my poem. All right. It's called "How Did the Disciples Fall Asleep?" All right. How did the disciples fall asleep when Jesus told them, "Stay awake and watch with me"? How did they in the spring moonlight close their eyes as the Messiah prayed beside them, weeping blood? I could say they didn't know, couldn't have known the moment they were living in. They didn't know the depth of his anguish, didn't know his death was imminent. Do you bear the guilt of a sleeping disciple? Did you forget your friend who was thrown in prison? Is despotism and imprisonment so normal in your world that you start to ignore it? I would believe you if you said you were afraid and pushed thoughts of him out of your mind, so sure someday he'd emerge at random release from the tyrant's fist after some time or finally a trial. I could say you didn't know, couldn't have known the moment you were living in. You didn't know the depth of his anguish, didn't know his death was imminent. You went back to cafes, even laughed, even danced, even lived unforgettable days embracing your whims. Now you cannot let go of the grief, the unbearable weight. of all the time and effort you didn't spend staying awake and watching with him. Thank you.
Oh, Katie. Yeah.
Oh. And I encourage people, Google Shadi Habash, look up this story. It's terribly painful, but it's very, very important to not forget. These kinds of things unfortunately happen with a level of frequency in a country like Egypt and many others around the world. And we could be becoming like this too. We need to wake up, we need to stop it, and we need to help our friends before it's too late. Um, and that YouTube video, which is a spoken word performance of his last letter by Rami Assam, is incredibly powerful. People should go take a listen and watch that and take courage and support their friends who are being persecuted in this way.
Definitely we'll put that in the notes, Katie. And you know, it's interesting to me. After my mom passed away, a friend texted me, "Sorry
Yeah,
I can't make it. Hope it goes well today for my mom's service." No, no, you cannot phone this in. You know? And it's a kind of sleeping that we become,
right.
these
Yes,
things
yes,
that should connect us actually separate us and
right.
give us permission to not feel things.
Yeah, that was so well said, Sandy. That is so absolutely true. And gosh, you're going through life and you're going through the motions and you're thinking of your needs, your survival, and of course you care about your friends, but just like in the news we hear a terrible thing happen, we all pay attention to it, and then our attention moves on. Well, guess what? That person's still in prison. They're still suffering, or they're still sick, or they're still, recovering from a terrible disaster. And I think while we absolutely need to take care of ourselves so that we have something to give, we also need to make sure that we're not maybe busying ourselves as a way of burying our heads in the sand. And so I think there is a really good balance between taking good care of yourself, doing what you need to do to survive, and caring for the world around you, standing up beside people who are suffering to make sure that we can make this a better world and continue living in a world that we want to be in.
I think to see caring for others as a form of self-care.
Yep.
And Anne Applebaum in her many interviews with many podcasters answers the question, what do we do in our own worlds to push back against this creeping fascism that's coming our way? And
Right.
among her suggestions is to be in community with the people around you. Do not set
Amen.
yourself apart, And
That's right.
it's interesting. I I think a lot about the Gospel of Luke in conjunction with the Odyssey. Both have 24 books and both are heroic journeys. And
Really cool,
you
Penny.
read Luke and you're like, think about these disciples and you think, what? You know,
Oh.
they fall short a lot. And they don't always seem like the brightest guys.
But that is what is so human about that story. Jesus knows that he's going to be put to death. Like literally weeping, but he's stressed out. It's just please stay awake. And they're like, yeah, okay. And they're overcome. There's this feeling where that is very relatable, where it's just like I hear you and I care about you, but is it really that serious? And I think that's what really resonated with the Shadi's letter, where he's like, prison doesn't kill loneliness. I need your support to not die. I need to be released. I need justice, right? But what I really need to not die is your support. And I think in that parallel with Jesus in that moment is like, well, he knows what's coming anyways. He doesn't even ask for a rescue. He's asking for the support. Be there with me. Oh, I almost have a tear in my eye.
It's amazing, and
How
it
could you not,
yeah, and you know, in the Odyssey, whenever, Odysseus falls asleep,
Yes.
the world descends back into chaos, and, you know, and the relatable piece of it means, you know, once we catch ourselves having fallen asleep, having dozed,
Exactly.
we can extend to ourselves the same grace to get back on it.
We really have to as well because it's such a perceptional thing too. And I think it takes a level of wisdom and experience, and also experiencing a lot of pain in yourself to like in your own life to know what it really means to be aware and to be present, when others are suffering and when they need your support. And I think sometimes, even when we have our best intentions, at play, we're going to miss something. And we absolutely have to have grace for that. Or there could be something terrible happening where our support would be really useful and we just don't know, or we just don't understand. And I think there are a lot of good folks out there who would love to stand beside those in need, but they don't even know about those issues, don't even know that they're suffering, don't even know, how to support them. And I think that's why, although some may poo-poo raising awareness for different things, or having, opportunities for different kinds of people to be represented and, have their voices heard, I think that is critically important. That makes some of the biggest intangible difference that then turns into a real tangible difference.
Absolutely. Katie, did you have a third poem you wanted to share with us by any chance?
Well, you know what? Why don't I share the poem that is forthcoming in your
Oh, we get a
beautiful
preview.
literary
All
journal? In your fantastic, gorgeous literary journal, the Oronog Mountain Literary Journal. Let me just get to it. I'm sorry. I'm doing a lot of scrolling today. Okay, there it is. All right, it's a shorty. And I have a lot of poems that are kind of intense hard hitters, two of which I've read today. But then I have that is not my whole manuscript for sure. We have arcs and we have our poems of grace. That's what I call them in my manuscript. And so this is one of those poems for me. It's called Translation. The string quartet can loosen a prayer from me, can blow it full and taut with honesty, can set it flying from me. Their whinnying bows can nudge it as far as longing can go, until my ears are only eager for hearing. Thank you.
Oh, love it, Katie. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just the
Thank
range of things
you,
that you can do and reference. It's really really wonderful.
Sandy.
Question for you: when you write, has there anything that's sort of surprised you? Do the muses take you places you weren't intending to go? Have you
Oh,
ever gone back to something and said, "Wait, I wrote that?" You know, that where it just feels like you were collaborating with larger forces in some way, you know what I mean? Any surprises?
absolutely. Absolutely. As I kind of mentioned about my kind of very almost like very spiritual way of writing poems. Like I'm kind of channeling emotion, I'm tapping in, I'm like repeatedly listening to the same music to like stay in that moment. I think I have really surprised myself with that, especially when I've written in form, which you know, I think contrary to what you might think at first, form doesn't, to me, doesn't stifle creativity. It forces you to be more creative because you kind of can't just grab, maybe that first thing that comes to you. So I think there is a real beautiful thing that happens when you are kind of both in a flow state with writing and writing in form because yes, you are kind of making very conscious choices that can sometimes maybe feel like you're bruising the flow. But um, if you are really kind of tapped in, I think those are the moments when you're going to find where you're going to access certain words, you're going to choose certain phrases that are fitting like the meter and the rhyme and the mood. And you're like, oh, I would not have written this in any other sort of moment. And so I think that has really, just really moved me and gotten me so excited about trying to write and form even more. I think probably the most recent example of how awesome that experience was last summer when I worked on this pair of poems that were part of what we called an ekphrasis collab. You probably remember that. So that was an ekphrastic collaboration between the painter James Chen Wishart from the UK, from his series Obliteration Portraits. And so they were all these different skeletons in these different poses, sort of bursting forth with color, but they were all so totally different. And I had my two favorites, which I wrote poems about. And so I wrote poems about these two pieces. James had these gorgeous time-lapse videos of him painting, and I pulled in my friend Dave, who is ever my music collaborator. If you see the credits on anything that has original music, it's Dave. And to look at a painting and a time-lapse video that already inspires me, it's already tapping in. And then I sort of paired that with a particular song that really felt like it resonated with what I wanted to write at that moment. It was a really awesome, it was a really awesome and surprising experience because I was able to like honor the initial inspiration, like, oh, I feel like it's going this way. But the restrictions of the form, which for this particular one that I'm thinking of, out of the two, is prescribed fire. It's kind of almost a perfect ghazal form. It doesn't have the before the repeating couplet rhyme. That's the only thing I haven't like achieved yet in my ghazal writing. But to have like give myself the limit of having the same syllable length and using that same word and having each couplet sort of stand alone, but I am a little bit bending the form by having it kind of be this uh, a bit of a story of looking at someone and seeing and remembering, kind of trying to see the world through their eyes, is kind of what brings all of them together through these different images and the different couplets. It was just the perfect vehicle for that. So I think that's probably the most surprised I've ever been is that I kind of took my usual practice of like having my inspiration tapping in and it being the right moment. But then choosing a form which just made it, gave it wings. So it was kind of like everything else was the on-ramp and then we were there. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Katie, if our listeners want to get to your poetry, do you have a
Yeah.
website going, or is there a place that they can tap
Okay.
into to read more of your work?
This was made specifically for Instagram. It
Mhm.
can be found on Facebook as well, but it's kind of I feel like it's most perfectly viewed on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram. That's at the story of how. So let me just make sure if it's underscores or periods. I do different things in different places, and it's underscores between the words the story of how and the Ekphrasis collab pieces are, just scroll a little bit, you'll see paintings of skeletons. The other one, the one that I'm most referring to is Prescribed Fire. Um, The other one is a villanelle, so that was also a real treat. But with it being such a form where there are refrain lines, I didn't have as many image revelations in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's still something I'm so proud of. So find the skeleton paintings and you'll get to see a beautiful time lapse. You'll get to hear me reading the poem and some really awesome, powerful music by Dave Robertson.
Excellent. I'll put that in the podcast notes as well. And just to get to our kind of last last piece of this conversation, you are a one woman poetry universe and you're involved in so many things. So anybody listening who wants to get an experience of what it's like to immerse yourself in poetry, follow Katie on her social media and get to Norwalk.
Yes.
And I think I just want to say, having been to your, your celebration of your installation as or inauguration, I don't know what the word is, as poet laureate of Norwalk, just the city from the mayor being there and people being so welcoming and so excited for you and for the community that you are in that role was just very heartwarming. And in these very challenging times that you pack the house with people who care about you, but care about poetry because they care about each other and the place where they live. And that
Mm,
makes Norwalk a pretty special place. Um, would you mind just mentioning some of the things you have going on in case
for sure, for
you
sure.
wanted to get on the train and get down and see what's going on in Norwalk with you?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Hop on the train, get in your car, take a walk, get yourself to Norwalk to participate in all these great things. Well, the first thing that has been going on for quite a while is the monthly open mics that I organize together with fiction writer Chris Belden at Eco Evolution in South Norwalk. If you're following me on social media, you will see all of those posters. You'll get that information. And for that, we partner with Eco Evolution, and that kind of comes out of our live streams during COVID, our years of doing weekly live streams during COVID. So that is one thing that I have going on in terms of Poet Laureate specific events. Coming up on Saturday, June 21st, we've got our very first poetry walk. I've partnered with the amazing Melissa Slattery, and together we have set up a beautiful poetry walk. On the Norwalk River Valley Trail between the Lockwood Matthews Mansion and the Oyster Shell Park. It's going to be beautiful, and we will have special guests. We will have two poet features, Laurel Peterson and Summer Sawyer, aka Supreme Divinity, if you remember, from April 12th. And we will also have educator guests. We will have educational stops along the way from the Norwalk Tree Alliance and the Norwalk Pollinators. So we're going to be learning about the trees and the wonderful um, plant and flower life that support our pollinators. And while I do not want any pollinators inside my house, I will be very excited to see them on that trail.
That's great.
Sorry, but it's going to be amazing. Also, June 21st is Make Music Day. And after the poetry walk, you can go to the Norwalk Tie-Dye Festival as well. So it's going to be awesome on June 21st. So beyond that, uh, Chris and I, as FUMFA Poets and Writers Live, we have stage time at the New York City Poetry Festival coming up in July on Governor's Island. It is always a gorgeous time. Come on, treat yourself to a day out in the city. There's also a spa on the island. So, when you're done with the poetry, find me at the spa. Tradition of mine, and it's a good time. Then I am working with The Spread to set up a quarterly. So The Spread is a beautiful restaurant with a gorgeous patio in South Norwalk, fully wheelchair accessible. Um, which is really important. I know that not every single event that I can do is wheelchair accessible, especially if it's involving kind of going off of, on little trails and things like the poetry walk. But otherwise, I'm doing my best to make sure that it is. So quarterly, that is yet to be set up, but it's in the works. A poetry specific open mic at the Spread, and kind of inspired by the May 9th event, Poets Night Out, if you saw that on my social media. And then a little further out, which is still, a little bit in incubation period, but is on the calendar, is that there will be a fall poetry showcase in Norwalk at Art Monster Studio. And for that, we're going to have a mix of, I'm crossing my fingers to bring in some stars from other, from the region, poet stars from the region who are kind of on my wish list to have as a guest here. Paired with some local poets as well. So that'll be Saturday, September 27th. And if you are following me on social media, you will find all of the links, all the registration, all of the posts that you can like and share, and make sure that you get all the information from so you can attend.
I can attest that Katie makes it easy to sign up through Instagram. You don't have to jump through hoops and find yourself in some weird internet desert with you don't know how to get back. Yes, Katie will take good care of you if you get to her social media.
Thank you. And just one last thing is that I have an online literary journal that is not limited to Norwalk in any way. None of these events are, I'm organizing many of them as Norwalk Poet Laureate with our Norwalk poets in mind, but they are everyone is welcome. And so my literary journal is kind of rooted in the Northeast coast for poets who live here and poets who are inspired by the region. So I think that would include a lot of your audience, and we'll be reopening submissions in August. But please do go read the inaugural issue, which is out now. Also, link in bio on my Instagram. You can find it there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful job, and all your events are, like you, very welcoming and fun and spirited. So, Katie, thank you for being with us, for sharing your beautiful poetry and your inspiration, and giving us a place to spend the summer. This is really great.
I love it. I'm honored.
All right, well, see you around the neighborhood, Katie.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's always a pleasure.
This has been People and Their Poems, presented by Oronog Mountain Publishing. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check the show notes for more information about this episode. Visit oronogmountainpublishing.com for more information about our services and writing opportunities. And visit peopleandtheirpoems.net to learn more about the podcast.